What is up, guys? In this video, very excited to bring it to you. I'm going to be breaking down how I made over $50,000 profit in August. This is my best month sports betting this year. I had a lot of success the first couple weeks of college football. So I guess football season brought good luck, right? More sports means more profitable betting opportunities. So in June and July, I want to be clear, I don't make $50,000 gambling every single month. In June and July, I basically broke even. Baseball season is obviously a little bit slower. There's not as many sports going on. There's not as many profitable bets. So the purpose of this video is to basically break down how I made my money, the different strategies I used, the bets I placed. And one thing I wanted to mention is if you want to follow my bets, you can, right? Like I give out all my bets basically 100% for free. So you can follow me on Twitch. I live stream on Twitch. So you can literally see me lock in bets as I'm placing them. And I also give out bets on Twitter. So every single day I'm looking for profitable sportsbook promos, dropping bets consistently, sometimes at 2 a.m., sometimes at 2 p.m. Whenever there's value, I'm always hunting for good lines, dropping bets on social media. So the main sports betting strategy I use, it's a sharp betting strategy, is called positive EV betting. So basically it's possible because all sports books, they all want to be unique and they set their own odds. Which kind of makes sense, right? There's hundreds of sports books in the US. FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, Fanatics. If every book set the exact same odds, we wouldn't need hundreds of them, right? So every book wants to be unique and set their own prices. So basically what EV betting is you're hunting for discrepancies in the market. So I'll give you a simple example of a positive EV bet that I locked in today on my live stream. Utah State plus 3.5 on the first half spread at minus 115 odds. So this bet was on Fliff, which is a book that's available in nearly every state. So you may be thinking, why didn't you bet the full game spread? Why the first half spread? And again, it all boils down to finding value in the market. So if you look at this Utah State play, Fliff has no lean in their market. They're giving you the same odds on both sides of the spread, minus 115, minus 115. So they're basically saying both outcomes, plus 3.5 and minus 3.5, are equally likely, 50-50. Every other book has Utah State as heavy favorites to cover. Right, to cover plus 3.5. They have the Utah State side of the spread as the more likely or the favored outcome. So if you look at Pinnacle, they have Utah State as minus 135 favorites to cover. So we're getting 20 cents better, 20 cents of improvement on Fliff. You want to think like a trader, investor. You're always finding value in the market on all of your bets. You're getting better odds than other books. That's step one to being a profitable bettor. So basically, if you take Pinnacle's market, they have 24 cents of juice, minus 135, plus 111. That's a 24 cent spread. If you remove the spread, remove the VIG, that gets you to fair value or the true odds. So basically you can de-VIG a market with a no VIG odds calculator. I always say this is the most important calculator in sports betting. It takes a sportsbook's market, removes the VIG, and shows you the true price or the true odds, fair odds, with the VIG removed. So if you remove the VIG from Pinnacle's market, the fair line on Utah State plus 3.5 would be minus 121. And we're getting a better price on Fliff, minus 115. So we're getting better odds than fair value, right? That's all a profitable bet is. You're getting better odds than fair value. So I'll give you a simple example is right now, Bitcoin in the market is trading around $110,000, $115,000. If your friend said, hey, I don't want my Bitcoin anymore, I'll give it to you for $90,000. I don't know why he would do that or she. But obviously, that would be a good trade. You don't need to know anything about Bitcoin, right? You know you're getting a $25,000 discount to the rest of the market. The market's pretty smart, right? There's millions of people who own Bitcoin and investors who wake up every single day and they think, is Bitcoin overvalued or undervalued? So if you can get a $25,000 discount, that's a pretty good deal. So EV betting is the main strategy I use. Again, it's higher risk, higher reward. So you can see in August, I still had days down thousands of dollars. So you need to have a long-term focus, right? You're thinking like an investor. You're not going to win every single day, but over the course of the long run, you'll make money. I always say EV betting is kind of like being the best poker player in the world, right? Like, you know, sometimes you're going to get dealt crappy cards. You're going to get dealt 2-7 and you're going to lose money. But if you're the best poker player in the world, you have an edge. Over the course of the long run, you're going to make money. So you want to play as many hands as possible. You want a large sample size of hands. And it's the same thing in sports betting. If you have an edge, if your bets are positive EV or positive ROI, then you know, sure, you're going to have some ups and downs, but over the course of the long run, you're going to make money. So you want to place as many positive EV bets as possible. So let me give you a quick run through of how I find my positive EV bets, and then we can get into other sports betting strategies that I personally used in August to have an insane month. But the vast majority of my profits, probably about $35,000 out of the 53, was from positive EV betting. So here you can see the OddsJam positive EV tool. This is the main betting tool that I use to find my bets. So if you take a look, basically you just put in the sports books you use. Usually I'm in Virginia. Virginia is one of the best states for sports betting. You have FanDuel, BetMGM, like you have tons of different books. Currently I'm not in Virginia. However, I am using this book, which is called Fliff. So you can see the top play with a 3.5% edge. This percentage is known as your edge. So basically for every $100 you bet, you can expect to return $350 over the course of the long run, right? So that's edge. So basically all this tool does is it scans the millions of odds across books and points out the best value in the market. Where can you actually get an edge? So you can see this play is Browns plus 7.5. So what I can do is I can head over to the Sportsbook Fliff. OddsJam has one-click bet. So you can also just click directly and it will take you to the sportsbook, to the wager for books where a one-click bet is available. So if I go over here, what I can do is I can put in the Browns game and we can run this bet. So this is an alternate point spread. I don't care what I'm betting on. Sometimes there's more value on spreads, money lines, player props. Like I literally don't care at all. I just want to get the best possible plays. So we can go here and lock this play in on Fliff. They have a max bet size of $250. You can see here, no other books offering above plus 140. So it seems, you know, just kind of, if you want to take a gut check, it seems like this is pretty good value. And then if you look at FanDuel's market, plus 138, minus 178, you can look at as many sports books as you want. But what we can do is we can just back out what would fair value be. So if I go to a no-vig odds calculator, FanDuel's market, they have a 40-cent spread, 40 cents of juice. Is what I can do is I can plug this into a no-vig odds calculator. And what you'll see is the fair price with the vig removed is plus 152. According to FanDuel, that's just one data point. OddsJam considers all of these sports books as data points. So we're getting plus 160 on Fliff. The fair price, according to FanDuel's market, if you remove the spread, the vig, the juice, would be plus 152. We're getting plus 160 above fair value. So this bet's plus EV. And then you can do that for DraftKings too. Their market is plus 135, another multi-billion-dollar company, $20 billion company. You want to put some weight into their odds. You remove the juice from DraftKings market. Pretty similar to FanDuel, the fair price with the vig removed would be plus 151. We're getting plus 160 above fair value. So this bet is plus EV. Now, one thing I do want to mention is I use dozens of sports books, right? We never know which book is going to have the best value on a given day. Sometimes Fliff has the best plus EV bets, positive EV. Sometimes it's FanDuel. Sometimes it's DraftKings. The more books you use, the better. And another thing I wanted to mention, so here's a book called Rebet. This is another sweepstakes book that's available in nearly all states. So what I can do is I can go here to the Titans-Rams game. Where is this game? Some of these books have search buttons, some don't. And this is the under 43 points, right? A mainline market, so I can pull it up here. OddsJam, positive EV betting. I place sometimes thousands of bets, right, in a month. You never, like, the more bets you place, if all your bets have an edge, the higher probability you make money. So Rebet's going to limit me to 264. So I'm going to lock this in on Rebet. And once again, I can devig these markets. So Bet105 and Pinnacle are two pretty sharp books. You can see Pinnacle, pretty active liquid betting market. They already have 3K betting limits and it's only Thursday. This game's not till Sunday. So if we remove the VIG, they have an 18-cent spread, plus 124, minus 142. The fair price, according to Pinnacle, which is known to be one of the sharpest books, with the VIG removed, is minus 131. We're getting minus 127, which is a better price than the true line. We're getting better than fair, which is why this bet is mathematically profitable or positive EV. So the more books you use, the better. I don't only bet for football. I oftentimes am placing bets for Sunday, the Sunday before, right? Sometimes when books first drop lines, that's when there's the biggest discrepancies, the best edge. So I'm locking in NFL bets on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, everything. And then Sunday, I have hundreds of bets open. I let the math work itself out. Every play has an edge. In most NFL Sundays, I end up making money. But without further ado, and you can see Rebet just adjusted the line. Sometimes these positive EV bets, they move quick, which is why a tool like OddsJam that scans the thousands of lines on all these books to point out the few that are actually plus EV profitable is super valuable. But anyways, without further ado, let's get on to some other betting strategies. So the second strategy, main betting strategy I use after positive EV betting, which probably made up about, I don't have an exact number, but probably $7,000, $8,000 of my profit, is called arbitrage. And arbitrage is actually how I started sports betting. It sounds a little too good to be true. It blows your mind. But once you start doing it, you'll see it's real. You'll make big profits with it, and you're going to become obsessed with it. So it's called arbitrage, and arbitrage makes risk-free money, risk-free profits. And I'm aware that probably sounds too good to be true, but let me break down arbitrage for you, okay? So all sports books set their own odds. Arbitrage is just when two books have such different odds, right, that you can guarantee a risk-free profit. You bet the over on one book, under on a different book to guarantee a profit. So here's an example of arbitrage. I gave out this play on Twitter. This was an arbitrage play on Baker Mayfield. So FanDuel had his over 2.5 passing touchdowns at plus 200. And Rebet, another book I use in Virginia, was super different. They had him at plus 118. Huge difference. Huge. Right? That's like being able to buy a stock at $118 on E-Trade, and then on Fidelity, it's $200. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The exact same bet has an extremely different price on these two books. So what I did is I bet the over on FanDuel, the under on Rebet. FanDuel limited me to $400. So I put that into the arbitrage calculator. It's also known as a hedge calculator. And what this calculator tells me is, hey, on Rebet, bet $766.79, and you'll make a risk-free profit of $33. So what I did is I rounded that calculator. Like, I don't want to bet some weird number. It just doesn't make any sense. So I rounded to 770. So basically there's two outcomes, right? If Baker goes over 2.5, I win on FanDuel, $800 profit. I lose 770 on Rebet. I'm up $30, right? That's the first outcome. Or the second outcome is he goes under. I lose 400 on FanDuel. On Rebet, I win 770 times 100 over 177, which is about $435. So I'm up I'm up $35 in profit. So regardless of what Baker does, he can have a great game, a horrible game, I don't care. I'm making $30 or $35 risk-free profit. And the reason it's different if he goes over or under, like I make slightly different amounts of profit, 30 versus 35, is I rounded the arbitrage calculator. So if you follow the hedge calculator exactly, if I bet exactly 76.79 or 766.79, like the calculator says, I would just make 33.21 regardless of the result. But because I rounded to 770, the amounts are going to differ slightly depending on if Baker went over or under. But arbitrage is a great strategy. It's daily returns. Usually you're betting on games that day. So like I locked in this arbitrage play a few hours before the game, maybe even just an hour. I don't really remember. But right when the game ends, one bet wins, one bet loses, you're up $30. So your bankroll can grow really quickly. But anyways, let me give you a little tutorial on how to arbitrage bet. I use OddsJam. It's a great software. You should use it. You should check it out. It's an amazing software for arbitrage betting. So here you can see the OddsJam arbitrage tool. You just put in the books you use, and then OddsJam is just going to scan the millions of lines, point out these rare few bets. It's only a small fraction of lines available on books where you can bet the over, the under, make a guaranteed profit. So here's a simple example, right? FanDuel has this over at minus 250. DraftKings is super different at minus 181. These two books are so different. You can bet both outcomes to guarantee a risk-free profit. So you just pull up an arbitrage calculator and maybe you want to bet 250 on DraftKings. What this calculator is going to tell you is, hey, if you bet 133.84 on FanDuel, the second this Giants-Cowboys game ends on Sunday, you're going to make $429 risk-free. So obviously, the more books you use, the better. But, you can play around with the calculator. Again, I recommend rounding your bet sizes. And one other thing I wanted to mention is sometimes there's also arbitrage bets that are middles. This is a very good example between Fliff and DraftKings. So basically, on Fliff, you can get Florida Atlantic minus half at plus 190. On DraftKings, it's Florida International plus 1.5 at minus 174. So this is an arbitrage bet. Let's say I want to bet 250 on DraftKings. This is going to tell me bet 135.75, maybe round to 135 on Fliff, right? You're going to make 793 risk-free. However, if there's a middle as well, like you can see middle on OddsJam, that's what it says right here. If it's a middle as well, you have the possibility of winning both bets. So worst case scenario, if I follow this calculator, right, I'm going to make 783. However, if FAU, Florida Atlantic, wins by exactly 1 point, right, let's say the first quarter spread, so let's say they're up 7-6 at the end of the first quarter, they're up by 1, I'm going to win this bet and this bet. So that's a middle, right? So basically, I have no risk to betting this. I'm making at a minimum 783, but if Florida Atlantic wins the first quarter by exactly 1, 7-6, 14-13, then I'm going to win both bets for hundreds and hundreds of dollars in profit. So arbitrage and middle betting, arbitrage bets that are also middle bets are super powerful. I love this strategy. Again, maybe didn't make me $10,000, but it's a consistent growing of your bankroll. When you're arbitrage betting, you don't have losing days. So arbitrage and positive EV, those are the two core betting strategies that sharps use to make money. Middle betting as well, but I kind of looped that in with arbitrage. I just showed an example on the screen share. But the final strategy that made me a few $1,000s is just playing profitable promos. Okay, so all of these sports books are in ruthless competition for new customers, so they run these promos. Some of these promos are extremely lucrative, if not free money. Free money. So for example, week 1 of the NFL season, a book called Fliff, they had Jalen Hurts to throw 1 passing yard at plus 100 odds. Granted, they cap it at $10, but that's literally a free $10 bill. You log in, you bet the promo, you're up $10. It's the same thing here. Another book, Sleeper, they had a Jaden Daniels free square. I turned that in to free money, right? Like, these promos are insane. So I use dozens of sports books when I'm in Virginia. The first thing I look for is the low-hanging fruit, right? Like, the easiest money you are ever going to make gambling is from sportsbook promos, bonuses, these no-brainer discounts. So every single day, the first thing I do on live stream on Twitter is I look for these no-brainer promos, I play them, and that makes up a few $1,000s in profit for me every single month. You just have to hunt. FanDuel runs a ton, DraftKings, all of these books do. But regardless, basically all of my profit boils down into 3 or 4 main strategies, right? It's arbitrage, positive EV, middle betting, which I kind of loop with arbitrage, and then promos. The final strategy, which is kind of a part of EV betting, is DFS strategy. So there's some DFS sites like Prize Picks, Underdog, Bettor. I've done tutorial videos on them, and they are super exploitable. Okay, they are super exploitable, and I'm going to show you exactly how to get an edge on these books and make money long term. So DFS books, there's 5 main DFS books I use. There's a new one called DraftKings Pick 6. All of these platforms run a ton of promos as well, but we have DraftKings Pick 6, Dabble, Underdog Fantasy, Bettor Picks, and Prize Picks. Those are the 5 main DFS platforms I use. And you can see in terms of my all-time profit, Underdog, Bettor, like these books, you can really print profits on them. I'm up 6 figures in profit on Underdog Fantasy. But anyways, what's unique about these books is compared to a regular sports book, if I start building a dabble slip, so for example, this play recommended on OddsJam is Martin Perez over 3.5 strikeouts. Okay, so on Dabble, the odds for the over and the under are the same. Like if you look above, there's no odds on Dabble, a DFS site. It works pretty similar to Prize Picks. Any play you do, you're going to get the same price, the same payout if you take a player's over or his under or her under. So for Martin Perez, if I take his over or under, I'm getting the same payout regardless. So basically the odds are the same. So what you can do with the OddsJam positive EV tool is compare the lines on Dabble to sportsbooks to find value. Same thing with Prize Picks, Underdog. So every book has Perez heavily favored to go over 3.5 strikeouts. So that's the sharp pick we want to be on. And then it's the same thing. I don't care what I'm betting on. So here we have a college football play, under 1.5 passing touchdowns. And we also have a NFL play. So on Dabble, the best type of slip is a 3-pick entry or a 5-pick entry, but usually I'm running 3-pick entries. And for a 3-pick entry, you can see here you're getting a 6x payout. So if I change Perez to an under or an over, you can see my payout doesn't change. I'm getting a 6x payout. So they're giving me the same payout. Obviously, I want to be on Perez's over, considering that's the heavily favored outcome, right? According to every sports book, every data point in the market. So this would be a sharp Dabble slip. And what I can do is just lock it in. So what you're going to notice about Dabble, if you look right here on Dabble, is I had to disconnect my phone. It messes with it when I have my phone connected, is they limit me to 47.25 on every slip I lock in. So here's the play, right? Perez is heavily favored to go over. Again, Dabble, unfortunately, I'm limited at this point. But what was I going to say about Dabble? Is it's still an amazing book, even with 47.25 bet sizes. Like, I could bet $1,000 on every Dabble play. I think this is where they limited me, you know, kind of at the peak at around $29,000 profit. I've still been able to grind out another $6,000 or $7,000 profit just doing this strategy using the OddsJam positive EV tool. So on Dabble, you know, any 3-pick entry, you're getting a 6x payout. So if you look at a parlay calculator, any 3-pick parlay where every leg is minus 122 comes out to being a 6x payout. So basically, Dabble is just charging minus 122 juice, and it looks like they already removed it. they're basically, sometimes these books, Dabble does not like my action because I've killed them, so they've removed it already, it seems like. We can actually pull it up. No, maybe they didn't. I don't know. We can try to bet another slip or play another slip, but Dabble basically for an over-under, they're giving you minus 122 odds. We're obviously getting good value considering every other book has the over super favored around minus 145. So that's kind of how I beat these DFS sites. You can also find line discrepancies. So maybe there's an example here. This is actually a great example. Is I can copy this entry. We can get rid of the James Cook play. And I can throw in this other college football play, which is Bryce Farrell, Stanford receiver, over 29.5 receiving yards. So even though they're limiting me to 47.25 a slip, if I keep betting multiple slips, I'm kind of able to work around limits or get more action down on a sharp pick like Perez over 3.5 Ks. So if you look here, this is the OddsJam Fantasy Optimizer. It just points out line discrepancies. As you can see, OddsJam, on OddsJam, Bryce's line, we were able to get him at 29.5. FanDuel Sportsbook, which again is a multi-billion-dollar company, you want to put some weight into their odds. They have his line at 41.5, which is super different, right? You could middle this, right? You could bet his under 41.5 on FanDuel is over on Dabble. That's a huge line discrepancy. But FanDuel, you know, all the other books have his line much higher, so that's the play I ended up running. So I use this optimizer in the EV tool for Prize Picks, Underdog, all these different DFS books. So again, in terms of my profit, positive EV, I consider DFS, like this slip we just got locked in on Dabble. I consider DFS to be a part of positive EV, right? It's just finding sharp picks, even though these are fixed payout fantasy sites. So positive EV betting made up the vast majority of my profit. It was mainly from sports books like Fliff, not these fixed payout DFS sites like Dabble. But that was my profit for August. Positive EV was the main category, mainly sportsbook, then also some of this DFS stuff like on Dabble. And then it was arbitrage betting. That was the second main category, and then promos. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, please let me know if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for your time.